everybody. Look down below, see the red subscribe button. Go ahead and click it for me. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Shannon Confidential. I am Shannon, your host, and Shannon Confidential is a podcast about life, love, and everything in between. And today's in between, I am so excited for. I know I say it all the time, but the truth is I really am. We are having a private investigator on. She's also a researcher for FITSNews. Her name is Jennifer Wood. She is so spectacular. She's like the coolest chick ever. But she's going to go into how she became a private investigator, what she's done, how it came about, how she transitioned to a researcher for FITSNews. Lots of interesting stuff behind Jennifer Wood. So I can't wait to introduce all of you to her. And she is up next. All right, everybody, here is the woman I just told you about, Jennifer Wood. She is spectacular, remarkable, total badass. And I cannot wait to really dive into what is all about Jen Wood and being a private investigator and a researcher for FITSNews and everything that goes with that. So I'm not going to talk over you, Jen, even though I'm really excited. Jen, welcome to Shannon Confidential.
Hey.
I'm so excited to have you. So tell everybody about you. You know, what do you do? Where did you come from? How did you get to where you are today? Just give us the Jen story.
Well, currently I am working as a researcher for FITSNews, which is a news source based out of South Carolina. If you've heard of them, probably, if you're not from South Carolina and you've heard of them, it's probably because of the Murdaugh saga that's going on in South Carolina. So that's kind of what brought me to FITSNews, is that entire crime.
Yeah, that entire chaotic thing.
Yeah,
it's a beast of a thing.
At one point it was a murder, but it is far more than that at this point. So prior to doing that, I mean, a little bit about my background is I'm originally from Michigan. My degree is in criminal justice from Michigan State University. After I graduated, and we won't go what year because that is forever ago, but you know.
Whenever that was, you look fabulous, so don't worry about it.
After I graduated, my husband's an aerospace engineer, so we relocated to Indianapolis for his job. And while we were living in Indianapolis, I just kind of fell into private investigative work.
Wait a second. You just fell into it. That's not. How do you fall into private investigation?
I just fall into things. I don't know how it happens. But I had a friend who was going through a very messy divorce and with child custody issues. And she had hired a private investigator who used to be an FBI agent. And while we were meeting with him, I was discussing some of the research I had done for her prior to her hiring him officially. And he ended up hiring me and then referring me to another investigator in town. So we all kind of worked as a team.
Clearly you were doing some good research.
Professional rabbit holer. I'm a professional rabbit holer. That is what I call myself.
Okay.
So I ended up doing that for 7 years, and then we relocated to Louisiana. Once we got here, I didn't really have the context to keep doing it, and just I wasn't interested in getting licensed here. So I did other work for a few years, and then this case popped up. Basically like on the news, and I think it was around the time where there was the double homicide involving the case, and I started hearing the story and digging into it, and listening to Mandy Matney's podcast, which is fabulous.
Yes.
And eventually I reached out to little folks at FITSNews and said, here's some of the stuff I'm finding. Do you want me? I'm going to keep digging. Do you want me to keep sending it to you? And he said, yes. And
he was like, okay, strange woman that just contacted me.
I know. It was a little weird. Like, I don't typically do that kind of thing, but it was, what I was finding was significant. And I felt like I shouldn't be sitting on it. And wanted to share it with somebody, and their reporting had been fabulous. So they were the first people I had I thought of. So yeah, I just kept digging and digging, and eventually they hired me, which was fabulous because it's a great team. They're doing some groundbreaking work in South Carolina. It's just fearless reporting. So
Exactly.
it's an honor. Yeah, and it's an honor to be a part of the team.
Yeah, and their writing. I love their writing. If you want to read articles that are written as if you're having a conversation with somebody, their writers are spectacular, and
Yeah,
they don't hold back on what they feel. They're not sugarcoating anything. They will report the truth, but they'll
right.
report it as if you're talking to them. So it's almost personal conversation. So I love the way they write, all of them.
It's interesting because I don't necessarily have any of the same political views as Will, but I find that in terms of their reporting, it's not about the politics; it's about what's right.
Exactly. I couldn't have put it better. Yes.
Right. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been interesting. It's been fabulous, and I'm hoping they keep me around for a while because I love it.
Well, I have just had so much fun getting to know you better through what you're doing at FITSNews. But you said something earlier I just want to touch back on. You said you'd want to get licensed in Louisiana. So if you wanted to be a private investigator, you're not like licensed everywhere. You have to be licensed per state. Is there any licenses that cross over?
There are some states that have reciprocal licensing. So I'm trying to think of a good example. I think Georgia and Florida have reciprocal licensing, but if
Okay.
you have a license in Georgia and you work in Florida for more than 30 days a year, you are required to eventually get a license in Florida.
Okay.
A lot of the licensing requirements vary by state. Some states, you just say, I want a license, get a background check, and they give you a license. Some require some training, some require degrees.
Yeah.
And
I researching this for you, I looked in Tennessee. In Tennessee, you can it's a test. I'm not sure what the course is, and there's different ways to go about it, but there is a test required. What did you have to do? For anybody
so
listening that is like, wait a second, that sounds totally cool.
So because in Indiana, because I had a degree in criminal justice,
Okay.
I would have qualified to get an individual license, but because I worked for an agency, I was able to work under their license
I see.
because there's individual licenses and agency licenses, and it varies by state how those licenses work.
What do you do? Like, how do you become, like, just tell me, okay, so you get a license, but there's got to be more to
I
it.
think
Give me the juice.
I worked with a guy named Steve. He's amazing. And I think the best thing, if this is something you're interested in doing, I would advise finding somebody who's well-respected in the community in which you want to work and offering to work with them, because he taught me everything I knew.
Is that just how to research, how to communicate? Like, what do you get taught? How to sneak in bushes?
I mean, surveillance techniques, like laws, in Indiana, it's a one-party consent for recording conversations. Is your state a one-party consent state? If is it, two-party consent? Like, how does the law work in your state?
And one party means only one party knows they're being recorded.
Right. So if you're calling somebody and you want to record it, as long as you know it's being recorded, that's all that matters, which I don't think is right, but there are states where that's allowed legally.
Yeah.
And if you're working for a law firm or an insurance company and you get called into court, it's important that you know the laws regarding surveillance, recording and conversations and interviews, so that stuff is admissible in court.
Because that's where it matters. Even, with crime scene investigation and crime scene technology is where my degree is. If you don't collect it correctly, it's worthless.
Exactly. And then a lot of, I have ADHD terribly. So I am not, like, surveillance is not my favorite thing to do, because you get there at 5 a.m. and you're sitting there for 8 to 10 hours just waiting for somebody to do something they're not supposed to be doing.
And then it's like,
I know, I'm like, oh gosh. So a lot of what I did was like the background checks, the asset checks, the preparation for surveillance. But I was always available if you needed me for surveillance. Yeah, I mean, and we would do anything from criminal cases to insurance fraud cases, to asset checks. I mean, I think my least favorite cases were divorce cases because they're always messy. I
Yeah.
mean, if you're hiring a PI, probably you already have the answer. Like, you have
Trying
the
to
answer
prove it.
you're going to end up with. You know where you know where it's going if you're hiring a PI.
Yeah. You're certainly not working it out in marriage counseling, that's for sure.
Exactly.
So you're doing all of this work. You go to Louisiana, you see the Murdaugh saga, starting to grow legs per se. You contact FITSNews. So how do you take being a private investigator and then turn that into being a researcher, correct, for FITSNews?
Yes.
Okay. So
I mean,
how does that transition?
a lot of the skills overlap. So in terms of being an investigator, like when we were working on preparing stuff for a subject, I would get reports ready on individuals. All right, here's what you need to know. Here's important, where they live, what they're doing, asset wise, what they're driving. And that's, I mean, a lot of the same things that a team of reporters and editors needs when they're preparing for a story. It's they need a 1-page sheet. Like, what do I need to know before I write the story?
And sorry to interrupt you. Now, gathering that information, there's certain websites or ways that you gather it, that you have, that your investigator license or your being an actual researcher for a news organization provides you access to greater data?
I
Or you're
mean,
just
right
really good
now,
at looking it up?
I don't have a license right now,
Okay.
so I'm just using stuff that's publicly available. But I
You just
do
know how to look for it.
yeah, and I do know different ways to look for things.
Okay.
And the reports that I would have that would be available to me if I was licensed comparatively are about the same as what I'm accessing unlicensed,
Okay.
which surprised me because those reports aren't cheap.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is great.
Yeah. That's so exciting. So as you're pulling documents for this crazy case, and I will call it crazy, that's like actually being nice. Do you just get blown away with the more and more and more information you start to pull, and the big knot of tangled necklaces you're trying to untangle?
It's funny because I remember as a private investigator, like I remember getting leads on something and sometimes it just didn't pan out. Like it would just be, okay, I went down that rabbit hole, there's a dead end. And I have to say that there really has not been many dead ends with this case.
Wow.
I mean,
Okay.
every tip I get, I start digging. I'm like, oh, yeah, this is something. I think this might be something. So it's surprising to me in terms of the sheer enormity of it. I mean, it's just,
And it keeps growing and
it keeps
growing and
going.
growing.
And it's like I'm like looking at things. How do I organize this so it makes sense and I can see trends? And there's so much information that sometimes that's where I'm getting that's where I'll get overwhelmed like, okay, so I have all this data. How do I organize it and try to make sense of it?
I like
So
what you just said. Yeah, you just said trends. Do you just in all of your experience, you start to see when you say trends, do you mean patterns? They have the same motive in certain criminal activity. They follow the same process, cover up type stuff.
Yes, I'm definitely seeing a lot of patterns in how they acted. And if you're not following this case closely, I mean, what it started with was, double homicide and possible obstruction of justice in a boat crash prior to the homicide. And then as these civil attorneys were proceeding in civil court on lawsuits related to boat crash and wrongful death, they uncovered a lot of financial crime. So
A lot.
Like just endless financial crime. So what we're seeing is a lot of corruption. I mean, there haven't been RICO charges yet. I don't know where that stands. I'd be surprised if it didn't, portions of this case didn't end up in racketeering federal court territory because I do see a lot of patterns. But yeah, it's a lot of financial crime, and in that you really do have to look at trends and see if you can put pieces together and see if you can figure out where the money is going.
Yeah, like you follow science, follow the money. Now you just said
Right.
RICO for listeners and viewers out there that aren't quite sure what that means. Can you explain what RICO is?
So RICO is the Racketeering Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act that was passed by the federal government in 1970. Initially, it was intended to break up mob organizations, because what would happen is they would, have crimes that were connected to the mob.
Mhm.
They would go to prosecute them, but the mob bosses typically like to keep their hands clean. They would delegate their crimes out to their underlings. So, they would hire a hitman to kill somebody. The hitman would be prosecuted, but the mob boss would just keep operating. They would just get more hitmans when this guy's prosecuted and put away.
Mhm.
So what the RICO Act did was it allowed them to broaden their reach in terms of acting as a criminal organization.
Oh,
As the RICO Act kind of kept being used, it ended up being used more for white collar crime. So basically any crime that's committed under an entity, a business entity. So let's say a bank, for example. So let's say the bank president's committing crimes as the bank president. Because it's being committed under an entity, and if there's a pattern shown in the criminal activity,
uh-huh.
then it's likely going to end up in RICO territory. So it would be
Yes, if you're following this case, you're right. How in the world does it not?
yeah. I mean, they're still not there yet. I don't know if they're still making a case for it or if they're
Yeah.
just happy with their embezzlement. I don't know where it's at prosecutorially, but I mean, I would be shocked if it didn't, at least some portions of it end up there.
That's just incredible. So when you are collecting data and you have your sources, being that you're from Louisiana, and I know I'm not asking you to divulge anything, I'm just more curious for me. You build resources in South Carolina. You need to talk to people. Is that just boots on the ground? You head over there and you start to make those connections. I mean, how do you do that from another state? Because that's got to take skill.
It is a skill. I'm trying to think. I mean, I do have family in South Carolina. My husband's family is from South Carolina, and I still have family that live there.
Okay.
So I'm familiar with the area, but I'm not, other than vacationing in Edisto, am not overly familiar with the Lowcountry. So a lot of what I did was start to, I had Will point me to a couple of his sources and say, I think it might be helpful if you spoke with this person. They are very connected to the community. I think it would be a good person for you to get to know. And then also online on these Facebook groups.
And there's sorry, I didn't interrupt. There's one that's really good. If you want to say the name, that's fine. Go right ahead. They're great.
I mean, there's a lot of very good groups, but my favorite in terms of meaningful discussion about the case is Murdaugh In the Lowcountry. Just because, I mean, they do monitor the discussion for appropriateness, to keep things on track, to keep things in a healthy discussion territory.
That's good.
And there are a lot of people that are tied to the area in that group, which is great because, like, I don't know. I didn't know Paul. I didn't know Maggie. I don't know Russell Lafitte or his family. And I have to imagine they aren't all completely evil people. It's discussed. So it's always good to hear from somebody local who, I bank at Palmetto State Bank, and I've always found Chad Westendorf to be very helpful. I was very surprised to hear he was involved in this. Just stories from people, and knowing them, these, villains, but knowing them in the community prior to all this happened, because it does help you remember they are humans.
Yeah. And it even the smallest conversation with somebody, whether it be online, on the phone, through a Facebook page, just that little tidbit of information that maybe you didn't know.
Right.
It is actually shocking how something so, I don't know, if you take the sentence by itself, it doesn't seem all that relevant. But when you put it with all the information you have, you go, well, wait a second, that's something new. Then that opens up a whole nother door of what the hell,
And
so
there's some great researchers in there, because we had somebody had pointed out a loan that was taken out recently by an attorney in South Carolina. And the attorney was older, in the twilight of his career, but a very well-respected attorney. And he had just taken out $1 million loan with like a crazy term, like 90 years or something. I can't remember the exact term. And I was like, what bank would give this man this kind of loan? So I posted the mortgage document. I'm not a mortgage expert. I've looked at a lot in this case, but I posted it in the group, and somebody goes, oh, this is a reverse mortgage. That makes sense. That makes more sense than somebody giving him a regular mortgage for well past when he's dead.
I know people are living longer, but I don't know.
Right. So yeah, that did make the mortgage make more sense. Didn't make the fact that he had to get that kind of mortgage make sense, but it did.
Yeah.
It's little things like that where, I'm not an expert in everything. Does somebody have any idea what this is? And I'm totally open to asking for help.
I think it's great. Do you find that when you do put information out there, like say you did that post in that Facebook group, do you find that people really do enjoy helping? That overall people want to help, right or wrong?
I think they do. And I do think a lot of it is, the victims in this crime they could be you, they could be me. It could be your grandma. They took advantage of a lot of people who trusted them to do the right thing for them. So I do think people are always willing to help, and it's always good to hear. I've listened to, 911 calls 1,000 times, but, somebody's listening to it has a completely different, oh, I heard this, like, this is how I perceived it. So it's always good to have a different opinion from somebody.
That I love that. And if someone were to want to contact you, they've got some information or just to help out in any way, how does someone reach you?
Email's always the best. I've got, my email's super easy. It's just research@FITSNews.com. I check it all the time. I have alerts that pop up when it comes through. If you have any ideas, know something, I keep it completely confidential. And I'm happy to hearing anything, because this case is huge. Like, we are, somebody was like, what are you going to do after the Murdaugh case is over? And I was like, I just don't see that happening anytime soon, but I'm sure there's more crime and corruption I can find.
Oh yeah. Well, again, anything that Jen says today, she referenced some podcasts, she referenced some Facebook pages. I will make sure in the show notes below, you will see all of the links that'll take you directly to FITSNews, to Mandy's podcast, to the Facebook page, and to Jennifer herself, her email address. I'll make sure you guys have all of that, so you can try to understand. If you don't know what's going on, try to catch up real quick, and you just go to FITSNews, hit Murdaugh tab, and you'll just go to town. And
the podcast has been great, but if you're more of a visual person, ABC 2020 did a special in, I think it was November. That was one of the better done specials on the Murdaughs. They did some really meaningful interviews that if that's how you prefer to catch up on something, that's the one I would recommend watching.
And I'll link that below, guys. I can tell you for sure, I watched it, and it was one of those things where you just keep watching and going, wait a minute, is this for real? Then you go, wait, is this for real? No, wait a minute. Is this for real? If you watch Tiger King, nothing compared to this story.
I can't wait for Joe to pop up.
Yeah, I would just like wait for like a Tiger King music video in the background. I don't know, but
wait, there's more.
it's like, it's truly, and I laugh not because anything's funny, it's because it's so chaotic that it's really hard to wrap your head around how chaotic the case is. And, we were, between me or Jennifer, we've referenced a few things. It's basically the Murdaugh family has a very, very longstanding role in the community, a very, very successful and huge law firm. And when you have roles in the community, governmental roles in the community, and a very successful law firm, if you're not on the up and up on both sides, there is a very dangerous web that weaves. So that's basically where the chaos comes from.
Right.
And a lot of people probably didn't think that their sins were going to come back and haunt them. And that's where I think you're part of the investigation. There is the crime, there were the murders, and who's going to be punished for certain murders that even happened many, 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 many years ago. But as you're pulling documents and mortgage paperwork, there is a paper trail that goes far beyond a double homicide or a boat crash or a potential hit and run murder question. There is a trail, and those trails, I'd have to imagine, I'm just guessing, you can't have a paper trail and a bunch of financial corruption all by yourself. You need banks, you need higher ups, you need officials, judges, I don't know, to sign off on certain documents, home documents, what have you. That's where I think it's just going to tear into just complete chaos.
There were a lot of safeguards that should have stopped this that did not. There were a lot of people who either chose to turn their heads or were complicit. Which one wasn't? I think that's what we're seeing play out now.
Yeah, pick your poison. Which one were you, complicit or?
Right. Corey Fleming was the first co-conspirator who was attorney at another firm. He was indicted, I think it was last month. The months are flying. But as these co-conspirators are indicted, you're seeing who turned a blind eye and who was complicit and helped. I'm very anxious for the trials to start to see the evidence that they have.
Yeah. And I wonder if because there was a lot of help along the way, many, many hands, many kitchens and many chefs in the kitchen.
Yep.
And, I really feel bad and I'm going to say if there was anybody involved in the background chaos that truly had maybe just didn't realize what they were doing. Maybe they were just put in a role they shouldn't have been put in, and that all hell's coming down on them. I feel bad for that. But again, you got to be personally responsible for anything you're doing. Can't just take someone's word for it. But I think some heads are going to roll. I
think so too. I think sticking your head in the sand as a defense isn't going to work with this case.
No. Well, I have to tell you, the FITSNews team is so lucky that they have you. You're so down to earth. You're so normal, and you're good at what you do. I'm so happy I had the chance to get to know you better and talk with you more and text with you often. You have an amazing sense of humor. You haven't been scorned by the chaos you have seen. So, where do you go from here? What do you see next? Or just, you can't see past what this is doing right now?
Every week I start the week and I love what I do. So I wake up excited to get to work. And every week I start the week thinking it's going to go one way, and it every time goes the exact opposite direction. I'm did not see that coming. Just didn't. I should stop assuming, but I in terms of, right now the investigation is expanding into more of a corruption. Overall, the court system's corrupted. There's more people involved. So, I think naturally my research is broadening to where the investigation is going. The spider webs are reaching out, and I'm going with the spider webs.
Oh my gosh. Well, when you clear out all the spider webs in that portion of South Carolina, that's a massive dusting.
Yeah. I think that the court system is set up a bit for failure, in that The judges are, how the judges are elected by the legislature. Most of the legislatures are lawyers, and Will's doing a lot of really great reporting on that. But I do think that corruption is more widespread in South Carolina just based on how the court system is set up. It's just,
it allows the corruption to happen.
yeah.
And it makes you wonder, did they set it up that way?
It's been like that forever. Is that on
Yeah.
purpose? Why are they fighting so hard against change when it's clearly needed?
Yeah, because that messes with their agenda.
Exactly. So until they make some systemic changes, I think we're going to have plenty of crime and corruption to dig into in South Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely sounds like, the biggest case you're working on at the moment is, can you give any hints on anything else you're working on?
Oh boy. I do. We have been working on the Bowen Turner case. That was a young man who was accused of 3 separate violent sexual attacks against young women, beginning from before he was 18. And then recently they chose not to prosecute him in one of the attacks because the young lady had passed away. And then the other one, they gave him 5 years parole. So I think a lot of what we're looking at is where the justice system is failing victims and failing the communities and putting these people back out, in identifying cases like that in real time, which can be difficult.
Yeah. And you have to look through documents. So you have to see the details, maybe some details that aren't released to the public, or that you can't unsee it. You can't unread it. You can't unlook at it, because that's your job. So how do you decompress from something like that? Especially when, you got the Murdaughs, and yes, there was horrible crimes committed. You're now really diving into the financial end of it. But when you're looking at cases where, young kids, or, someone's just abused or harmed in some way, how do you decompress?
Oh, ooh, I compartmentalize. Like, I just, like, when I shut down my computer, I might still be thinking of, like, I'm one of those people, I'm always kind of thinking of ways to organize data, but like in terms of the case details, I'm able to kind of shove that out of my mind, probably because I'm organizing data in my brain.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I've got 2 kids that keep me busy when I'm not working. So it's just, I shut my computer and I got stuff to do. I gotta cook dinner. I gotta go to cheer practice.
Girl power. We could do a whole bunch of things. We're like,
I know, I'm just a multitasking wizard.
Yeah, you're doing this. You're PI work. You're a researcher for FITSNews, and then you've got 2 kids and cheer practice.
Yeah.
Goes to show you the woman's amazing.
Yeah, if you stay busy enough, you can just keep going and not think about the details.
Forgot it already. I'm trying to teach a flyer.
I'm trying to not drop a kid. We're cool.
Yeah, there you go. I love it. I'm just excited for you. I'm excited to what you're uncovering, the work you're doing for FITSNews. I'm a subscriber to their station. I love reading their articles. I love the way they write. I love knowing that some of the stuff I'm reading, I knew you had a big part in. It's really a lot of crazy fun.
Yeah, it is fun. I'm looking forward to doing a lot more and a lot more in-depth stories. So yeah, I'm excited.
I cannot wait to see what Jennifer uncovers in the future.
Watch out, people.
Jennifer's on the loose. Well, thank you, Jennifer, so much for being on Shannon Confidential. You have been a spectacular guest. You've been fun. You're so smart. It's just so nice to just talk to smart, educated, powerful, confident women. And to have you on Shannon Confidential is a real honor and a pleasure. And I cannot thank you enough for your time.
Thanks for having me. It was great to be here.
Absolutely.